Hey guys, JV here sharing my moveset guide for the Berserker class in For Honor. In this video, I'll show you exactly what each move looks like, how to execute them, and share little tips and tricks about the Berserker that the game doesn't tell you. This video should help if you're learning how to play the class, but also if you're having trouble against the Berserker, which can certainly be overwhelming. I know when I first started playing the game, I would get lit up by Berserkers, so this should help you for that as well. Before we jump into the moves, let's talk about what the Berserker is as a class. So this is an assassin. This is the Viking assassin. It's listed as a hard class, and I think that is accurate. This is definitely not a beginner class that you want to jump in when you first start the game. Some people do, and you can find success by spamming attacks. That's what this class is good at, and you get benefits by doing that. But experienced players know this, and they will just dodge away. One of the easiest ways to counter a Berserker is to just get out of the way when they start going into their uninterruptible combos. So assassins also have less health, their block is reflexive, which is something we're going to talk about, and there's more of a focus on dodging. So that's what the Berserker is all about. You know, it shares that with the other assassin classes. The game lists a Berserker as a short-range harasser. That's absolutely true. There is some teleporting with one or two moves, but it's not like the Orochi where you can teleport with half of the move set. It's just not like that. You have to be comfortable with being up close and personal and focus on overwhelming the enemy with your attacks and disguising them with a few cancel moves that we'll talk about. And the Berserker has so much side mobility. I think that's one of the strengths about this class is side mobility. It's hard to deal with when you're playing against it. The Berserker can also deflect, but it requires practice. It's not something you're going to pick up immediately. It's similar to parrying, but just with a different button input. So we'll talk about all of that in this video. Starting with the hero-specific passives, the way you're going to gain renown with the Berserker is through 1v1 fights, killing enemy heroes, and getting kill streaks for feats. This is purely offensive, and it makes sense because the Berserker is an attacking assassin. That's what they're all about. Every hero has revenge, but it's important to know that the Berserker has a level 2 feat, which allows attacking to build the revenge meter. So that is something that you're going to have on most of the time. The other ones aren't too great in that category. So keep in mind, if you want to build your revenge, you need to attack with this character. As with all assassins, you have a reflexive guard, meaning that your guard stance only remains active for a limited time, so you can't just hold block in whichever direction you want to block, like with every other class. Most of the time anyway, you're going to want to dodge and even dodge into an attack with the Berserker because they're so aggressive, and that's where their strengths are. So most of the time you're not going to want to guard, but remember that you can, just remember that it is reflexive. The Berserker can also deflect, which is dodging in the direction of an oncoming attack just before impact, and that's how you deflect it, and a deflection automatically guard breaks an attacking opponent, which is really key. So we're going to talk more about how to deflect later in the video when we look at the moveset. The Berserker has an infinite uninterruptible chain. When performing a chain of 4 attacks or more, your attacks become uninterruptible, and then additional attacks cost less stamina. This is so key. We're going to talk about the move that you need to use this with in just a second. Super important point for the Berserker, a top-heavy attack will always end your infinite chain. It will deal additional damage, but it will stop you in your tracks when you're trying to pull off the infinite chain. So don't do this unless you mean to finish off your chain. Just like with the Kensei, your dodge attacks can initiate chain attacks with the Berserker. That's chain starter. So we have 3 different dodge attacks that can lead you into a chain. That's going to be something very useful to learn. With close combat, if you happen to miss an attack, a chain, or a head finisher, you can cancel out of it with a zone attack or a dodge. That's just something to keep in mind if you're trying to line up a head crusher. You can cancel out of it. We'll talk about that when we get to that move. Finally, we have cancel attacks. You can cancel the startup of your basic attacks with a dodge. This is really useful. We're going to talk about how you pull this off after we go through the moveset list, but this is great for disguising what you're doing. You can start with a heavy and then cancel out of it with a dodge attack. It is very useful. We'll show that later in the video. All right, now on to the moveset list. Again, there's not a lot going on here, but there's enough to have a lot of variation in what you can pull off. We have 2 different chains. One of them is uninterruptible. We have a sprint attack that you're not going to use guard mode with, and then we have 3 different dodge attacks to work with. So there is plenty to work with, and we're going to go through all of that right now. First, we have Dance of the Paired Blades, which is light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, or heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light. I thought that the notation in the game was really confusing. So essentially what you need to do is you need to alternate. You can start with either a heavy or a light, but as long as you alternate back and forth between light and heavy, you're going to keep pulling this off. This is the infinite chain that we were talking about with the hero-specific abilities. If you land 4 of these attacks, your attacks become uninterruptible. You'll see kind of a white buff go over your Berserker Berserker, and then additional attacks will cost less stamina. So you can just keep spamming this thing, and lesser experienced players will not know what to do. Essentially, you have to roll away if you're facing this and you don't know what to do. Just roll away. That's how you can get out of this. Usually the Berserker will stop, but this is the bread and butter for the Berserker. Just remember that if you try to incorporate a top heavy in there, it will end this combo. So keep that in mind. If you intend on finishing it, you probably should finish with a top heavy, even if you don't land it. That's where you gain the most damage. Just vary up when you finish with that top heavy, because if you do the same 1, 2, 3, 4 combo every single time, they're going to know what to do, and your opponent's going to know that. You want to disguise when you're going to end with that top heavy finisher, and always when you're doing these long combos, mix up your directions. Don't do right, because they're going to block that. If they're a conqueror, they're going to end your combo immediately. So mix up your directions. The only other chain with the Berserker is Bear Mauler, which is heavy. Big thing to keep in mind with this is when you do your top heavy finisher. If you want to end Bear Mauler with a top heavy finisher, so that'd be side heavy, top heavy, you can do that. It is a little predictable, but just know that you can't do your top heavies with the first 2 heavy attacks, because that will end it. You can't start Bear Mauler with a top heavy attack. That's just not how it works, because the top heavy, again, is the chain finisher. I find Bear Mauler to be a little bit slow. It is great if you can catch your opponent off guard and they don't know what to do. If you change directions and you're fighting someone that's less experienced, you can get away with this. I find that Dance of the Parry Blades is a little more effective than Bear Mauler on average, but if you're ganking someone on Dominion or Elimination or Skirmish and they're not paying attention, Bear Mauler is just so much damage. So I would definitely use that on the objective game modes. Next, we have Boar Rush, which is out of guard mode. You're going to be sprinting and then heavy attack. This is the typical sprint heavy that every single class seems to have, and I'm not a big fan of it, honestly. It does have a nice teleport range, so you don't want to run up into your opponent, be like 5 feet away, and then pull this off, because there is a little bit of a delay. If you're fighting an enemy assassin, they're probably going to get a little poke in there and interrupt you. So I wouldn't use this like that. I would use this from a range in which you can get a nice little teleport into there. I think there are better ways to approach a fight, however, and we'll talk about those other moves. Boar Rush is just not, I'm not a big fan of Boar Rush. I would only use this when you're running into enemy troops on Dominion or something like that to take them out and then start using your zone attack. Next is Head Slicer, and this is forward dodge with a light attack. This is always going to hit on the top of your enemy or the front, whichever you like to say. So I like this one. This is a nice move to close the gap. It's effective against enemy assassins who are, side dependent, and they're going to attack you from the side. Well, you can get them with a quick Head Slicer. It's a quick move. You can catch enemy heavies by surprise with this, enemy vanguards, raiders, stuff like that. This is a nice move to start chains as well. As you guys know, we can start chains with these dodge attacks. So starting with a Head Slicer and then going into an infinite chain is definitely, a useful thing to get used to. Head Slicer is great, but Spin Chop is even better. This is side, so left or right dodge, and then light attack. So whichever direction that you dodge in, that's where you're going to get this attack off. This is so useful, especially against lesser experienced players. Spin Chop is really disorienting to fight against. You spin very quickly, and once you learn what Spin Chop looks like, you can kind of, block in that direction. I'm talking about from the opponent's perspective, but you can also start chains from this. So it doesn't even matter if your opponent blocks where you're going, you can start a chain with this. So what I like to do is start a Spin Chop and then go into a heavy, and then light heavy, and if my opponent can't handle it, you can switch directions and keep going into your uninterruptible chain. This is so useful. I also like to Spin Chop back and forth, left, right, or if my opponent's learning that, I can do left, right, and just mix it up with the directions. You can always follow up a Spin Chop with another Spin Chop, so just keep that in mind. Spin Chop doesn't have a great distance, so you're not going to be teleporting forward. It's not great for closing the gap. It's maybe like 5 feet. I'm using, fake imaginary feet, in a way that makes sense in my head, but Spin Chop doesn't close the gap too much, so don't use that. You can get caught in a bad situation. If you do miss, remember that you can cancel out of it with a dodge or a zone attack right afterwards, so you're not left vulnerable. Next is Head Crusher, which is forward dodge and heavy. So this is your close the gap teleport ability. You can do this from a very long ways away. Your Berserker will do a little sprint move and then jump really high in the air and attack. This is where people get you because it is deceivingly long range. It is crazy. And the best thing about it is that you can start a chain chain right afterwards. So if you do a head crusher, it's going to be an over top heavy, and then you can start with light heavy, and just go into the dance of the parried blades. My only issue with head crusher is that it's pretty predictable. Don't start every single fight with a head crusher. That's just a bad idea because your opponent will learn to dodge or parry, deflect, any kind of combination. It's always going to come from the top, so they know that. And if you do happen to miss it, remember you can just cancel out of it with a dodge or a zone attack. So keep that in mind. You're going to miss some head crushers. That's just going to happen. The final move is called slashing rush, which is backwards and then zone attack. So that's going to be light and heavy at the same time. So backwards, light, and heavy, both at the same time. This is like a backwards zone attack. To be honest, I've rarely used this, maybe once or twice in multiplayer. Seriously, this doesn't really come in handy that much. I would say when you're fighting an enemy Peacekeeper or an enemy Orochi, maybe another Berserker, this is useful when they're just trying to spam you down. You can slashing rush to kind of get out of that and they will back off. But this is really a defensive move. It kind of goes against what the Berserker is all about. So I really don't slashing rush all that often. I wouldn't put too much stock in this ability. Those were all of the explicit moves that the game teaches you. Now let's talk about other additional things, tips and tricks that you should know with a Berserker. First off, if I haven't, explained this already, infinite uninterruptible chain is so deadly. Use it to your advantage. If your enemy allows you to just go into this chain and use it over and over and over, use that to your advantage. Also use it on objective game modes when there's an opportunity to go up behind someone and hit them. I know some of you hate that prospect of ganking or no honor, whatever you want to call it, but use it to your advantage because once you become uninterruptible, there's really nothing that your opponent can do about it, especially if they're not facing you. So use the uninterruptible chain, vary up your finishers. Remember that if you finish with a top heavy, it's going to end the chain, but vary up that finishing time. Don't do 1, 2, 3, 4 every single time because your opponent's going to learn that. Remember that your dodge moves initiate chains. This is going to make you a lot less predictable. In fact, most of the time, you're going to want to start your chains with a side chop or the front, dodge light attack as well. And head crusher is also an option as well. But remember, if you start one of these dodge moves with a light or a heavy, you're going to need to follow up with the opposite in order to go into the infinite chain. And also remember that head crusher can lead into bear mauler. So if you're doing that very long range attack and you happen to hit it, go into bear mauler and you'll deal a ton of damage if you happen to hit all of those combos. I want to take a moment to talk about deflecting because it is a little bit difficult if you're used to parrying. I find it really difficult to both parry and deflect in the same combat scenario in a 1v1 or whatever you're fighting because you're using different sticks and different buttons, depending on whatever platform you're on. So with parrying on Xbox One, it's going to be right stick in the correct direction that your opponent is attacking and RT. But to parry, it's left stick and A. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, but once you parry, you immediately get a guard break, which is just a right out stun with your opponent. So if you do pull off a deflection and it takes some practice, then you want to go ahead and side heavy. This will hit 95% of the time. I think sometimes your opponent can recover. I don't know how that makes sense or why, but they can recover. If you do a top heavy out of a deflect, it's going to get blocked. Your opponent's going to know that. Do a side heavy and even start a combo out of it. A really good combo to learn is deflect and then side heavy, top heavy. That is the most efficient way to deal damage out of a deflection, but deflecting is difficult. You're going to have to learn how to do that. Just remember to vary up your directions when you're doing this combo because if you keep doing it, your opponent's going to learn. You always want to vary things up. One final thing about deflecting that I found confusing but totally makes sense because it's the same thing as parrying is you have to be within range of whatever you're going to be hit with. So if your opponent pulls out a big heavy and you're just out of range of, dodging and deflecting that attack, you're going to miss it. That's just how it works. And sometimes you're not going to deflect every time. So be prepared for that. Mix things up. Use the cancels, which is what we're about to talk about. What I'm about to show you is how you're going to disguise your attack, be a lot less predictable, and really tear up your enemies. This is all about canceling your startups to throw off your opponents. So what you're going to see here is me starting with like a side heavy and then dodging absolutely immediately. So on the controller or whatever platform, that's going to be, heavy or light. It depends on what you want to start with, and then immediately hit that dodge button left or right or forward. You can use this with a forward dodge as well, but what I like to do is start with a heavy and then side dodge to a chop, a side chop. So when you're canceling, you can use your mobility, you can switch up directions, you can start with a heavy from the right and then side chop to the left. that is very hard to deal with on the opposing end. So use these cancels. It's a little bit difficult to incorporate into everything else with the Berserker, but if you can start with these cancels, maybe even use these cancels mid-combo, then you're going to really throw off your opponent. They won't know what to do. They won't know which direction to dodge in, to guard, whatever it may be. The last thing I want to touch on with the Berserker is guard breaking. Please be careful when you guard break. You can get into a cycle where you try to guard break your opponent and you're not close enough, and that leaves you really vulnerable because if you miss a guard break, it's very slow. So make sure you're close to your opponent before your guard break, and after you guard break, remember not to top heavy because your opponent can recover from that. Remember to side heavy, and then finish with a top heavy or go into your infinite uninterruptible chain. All right, that is it for the Berserker. I hope this helped you guys out. Again, the Berserker is a little bit of a learning curve, especially if you're jumping into the game for the first time. Berserker is not a hero I would recommend. However, once you learn to cancel those startups and remember that you can cancel out of attacks that miss and incorporate the side chop into uninterruptible combos, this can be a very effective character. You can go into Dominion matches where you'll pull off like 15 to 20 eliminations or takedowns, whatever they call it. It's really crazy once you get the hang of this character. So I hope I taught you something from this video. If you learned something new, remember to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more For Honor streams and content coming very, very soon. Talk to you guys next time.